You've never seen it?
I've never seen it.
Oh, my.
So Colin, we're back again, episode 30. Today we continue our little adventure into end of an era films.
Yes.
Our first film explored the end of something a little bit smaller in scale, debutante culture in New York, and its vanishing cultural relevance, as well as the circumstantial friend groups therein. Our second film explored larger scale death of a cultural movement, the death of disco, consisting in the death of a group's nightlife and their financial stability. Today, we are going to expand yet further in the fledgling days of the decline of the Soviet Union and its effects on the world greater, focusing on one country in specific. How did the loss of a Red Scare affect the US's control of and relations with one of many of Europe's nations? How will a couple Americans abroad handle growing disdain for American overreach? Colin, I have a couple questions for you, but I figured today I'd just let you break into it because I have a feeling you might actually know what the fucking film is today.
I think I objectively do. I'm not going to say it before I open it, but it's because you did not hide anything very well. Not that I saw it when he was putting it together, but I saw it when he purchased it. So it's kind of not too complicated a thing to figure out. Oh, what? It's another Whit Stillman movie? Who would have fucking thought? You could literally probably go over his entire filmography in 1 year. So if I figured it out here, I'm gonna cut back to this in future episodes.
That's not it. But yes, today we're gonna be watching Barcelona. Colin, I figured you saw this one coming. When was the hint that like made you say, okay, it's definitely this?
After we watched the first movie, I looked up his filmography, and then when you said that he had only like one other film besides this, when I was looking through his other filmography on the last episode, I then proceeded to look up stuff for the thumbnail on this, and I remembered that you'd purchased a box set with all three of these in here. It's not that complicated. You're just a failure, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Oh shit. Have you had any exposure to this film and any like expectations for it?
No.
Okay, that's good. Of the three, that's generally considered the best one. And of the trilogy, it's technically the last one that's recommended to be watched. That's why it's third. That's why they're out of order as far as chronological releases go.
Yeah.
But this is generally people's favorite when they talk about it. This movie was released in 1994, filmed on location in Barcelona, Spain. It's directed, written, produced by Whit Stillman yet again. Edited by Christopher Tellefsen. Cinematography by John Thomas. And we got music by Mark Suozo again. Cast members include Metropolitan carryovers in Taylor Nichols as Ted. And we have Chris Eigman again as Fred, everybody's favorite. We have Tushka Bergen as Montserrat. We have Pep Monet as Ramon. And we got Mira Sorvino as Marta. This film, or at least the original concept for it, was the reason that Stillman actually began making films. This was the one that he had the original idea for. Originally, this film was going to take place in the 1960s and was centered around the political and social situation of Barcelona at that time. But budgetary constraints meant that version of Barcelona was just never meant to be. Stillman would learn a few things from filming and writing Metropolitan, mainly writing what you know. And so Barcelona is set in the 1980s when Whit Stillman would have actually been traveling there with his wife, who was born in Barcelona. Now that all is said and done, this film acts as the finale to what the public believe would be his entire body of work, until his return to movie making in the 2010s. Barcelona would be the end of an era for Whit Stillman's end of an era films, which is fitting, I see. Colin, any hopes or expectations for going into this one?
It doesn't suck. I don't know. Here's the thing with me and this guy so far, from the stuff that you've shown me, it's a 50-50 run so far. And depending on like how much he has like advanced by comparison to his last one, there's stuff probably I'm gonna like about it. I didn't dislike Metropolitan or anything like that. There's just stuff about it that I did dislike. I don't know. Just I'm hoping for a good movie. And I'm hoping for something that doesn't make me put my foot in my mouth when I'm trying to discuss political things, even though that shouldn't be too much of a problem, but I have a problem with that.
Now, I think it's about time that you and me take a trip to sunny Barcelona. We'll see you all there.
What exactly are you doing here?
I'm sort of an advance man for the Sixth Fleet.
That's going to be really tough. It's an assignment that will require a lot of diplomacy and tact. I'm really surprised he gave it to you.
You can't say Americans are not more violent than other people.
No.
All those people killed in shootings in America?
Oh, shootings. Yes, but that doesn't mean Americans are more violent than other people. We're just better shots.
I think it's true that the height of the sexual revolution is over. I don't go to bed with just anyone anymore. I have to be attracted to them sexually.
But I always thought that women had to have some kind of profound emotional bond with a man before they became interested in a relation of that kind.
Oh, no.
I don't think anti-Americanism is really all that significant a phenomenon. It's really nothing to take personally.
But you seem very intelligent for an American.
Well, I'm not.
Have you ever heard of the Marquis de Sade? Ted's a great admirer of de Sade. You see that odd expression on his face? Under the apparently very normal clothes he's wearing are these narrow leather straps drawn taut so that when he dances...
What?
He's a complex and in some ways dangerous man.
Just once, I'd like to go out with a girl not convinced I'm encased in black leather underwear.
That bothers you?
So, Colin, do you care to run us through a quick plot synopsis of Barcelona real quick?
Okay. Barcelona is a film about two nationalist white pigs as they
As much as they protest,
yes,
right?
Yes. As they enter, as you've said, like post-Soviet Union.
It's not quite post-Soviet Union.
It's
It's in the dying days. There's
it's-
an argument about the exact day that the Soviet Union died, but
Tear down this wall. One of them has like lived there for like a bit longer, so he has some sort of like idea of not necessarily the culture itself, but how to sort of survive within the culture. The other guy is a naval officer or whatever fucking rank he is, so he is automatically offended by everything.
You can't say Americans are not more violent than other people.
No.
All those people killed in shootings in America?
Oh, shootings. Yes, but that doesn't mean Americans are more violent than other people. We're just better shots.
He is offended by being called a fascist as he wears what is considered to them a fascist uniform, and doesn't quite fundamentally understand in his own stupid Chris Eichmann way that he is the problem. So as the film goes on, I would say less so that it's like that our characters really learn a lesson that they were necessarily the wrong ones, but sort of like learn to coexist with the individual people. I don't think they necessarily come to terms with their country's national problems, but within the context of when the film was made, I don't know if Whit Stillman necessarily was that kind of person. At that point, it was willing to confront that. So I don't know.
And all it took was him getting shot in the fucking face. How did you like the film? Just general vibes. How you feeling?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. I am still, I guess, processing it a bit. I'm not sure exactly like whether I thought it was like great or just good or anything, but I liked it quite a bit. I think this did kind of confirm a thing after watching a decent sample sizing of his work.
Okay.
Whit Stillman, I think, has a writing fixation that I'm unsure if he can like get out of, whether or not like that should be something he should try to, because it's his own writing voice, but he has a very specific way of writing characters that I myself, in a worse mood, possibly could find more grating. I think it does depend on the subject matter that he's talking about, because like I said with Metropolitan, I'm not sure how much self-awareness went into that. I think there's definitely more self-awareness, but once again, when this was being made, who he was as a person, I'm not sure how much exactly.
It's a common complaint that people think some of his characters talk like fucking aliens, especially when you put them, especially in this movie, when you put them up against like normal people in the just day-to-day PCs, you know, the day-to-day persons of Barcelona, Spain.
It's people lacking a general self-awareness of national identity outside of their own country.
Yeah.
And that carries on even into all the movies that do take place in America, because they are just ignorant white people spewing ignorant white people lack of self-awareness, like hateful things.
Yeah. Now, if we're going to talk about the acting, any standouts for you? Any specific like people that like break the mold or that you just find really interesting?
Well, that's the thing. I feel like they aren't like our two leads that carry over from Metropolitan.
Ted and Fred.
Yeah, and then obviously Chris Eichman carries over into Last Days of Disco. Ted and Fred, like those two actors, I think they're actually playing fairly similar characters to the kind of people they would have been in Metropolitan. Almost arguably, with Fred, is literally just the evolved version of probably what would have happened to that guy.
Point is, I could have shaved the wrong way all of my life and never have known it. And then I could have taught my son to shave the wrong way without him ever knowing it either.
These are the same archetypical characters that have like, not archetypical, the same type of characters that have just like grown up.
Yeah, and with Ted, I don't know if I necessarily like him more, but he feels, especially towards the end, a bit more like a real person. But I am feeling like I'm putting more so into the context of like when this was written about a specific point in time, and the fact that it's written by a white dude and all these kinds of fucking things. It is a movie that is more directly confronting these sorts of, like, cultural ignorances directly in their face. How it feels about those personally, I'm not necessarily sure that's necessary to say in the script, but, like, with that, Ted as a character, I find him to be similarly annoying in the sort of sense of, like, where you have adults that you disagree with them politically.
Yeah.
To be annoying to where you feel like you're really close to understanding, even at the very end, like just at the very fucking end, but like you still are just like just off enough because you're so brainwashed in your own weird fucking mindset.
What's really terrific is that when we act in ways which might objectively seem assholish or incredibly annoying, they don't get upset at all.
Like you said, he's learned how to survive in Spain, but he hasn't really learned to live there.
I think he has learned to be an American in Spain.
Yeah.
He has learned what not to say. I don't think he's learned what to say. In particular, he has learned how to not get shot, as opposed to Fred, who cut to the clip. Fred is a character that, like with all Chris Eichman characters, I am fine watching because I just find them so unbelievably like wretched and vile. I made a joke about halfway through the movie when he's starting to get real paranoid. I'm like, I really hope I see this guy get gatted. And you kept your mouth shut, which I appreciate.
I'm surprised you didn't get it when I was like, yo, that's so crazy. Yo, that's crazy. I said it like twice.
I was watching the movie. And then he gets shot in the head, and I'm happy I didn't watch this in a movie theater because I double fisted in the air and went, yes! Because, like, I don't know. And once again, that's not even on this thing of, like, I hate this character. It's not like a thing with people, like, with horror movies. They're just like, I hate this fucking character and I want to see them murdered. It's more so just this thing of, like, you are a fascist showing up in another country that you are not welcome in. Fuck you a little bit.
Yeah. He has like one truly terrible, awful, rotten day.
Yeah.
And then that's the fucking point that makes him turn around even a tiny little bit as a character. He's still an asshole, as all Chris Eichman characters are, especially in Whit Stillman things. Yeah. But, you know, to kind of like fix up and try to like get something going.
Yeah, it's like his character's entire aura is that he's a liar who refuses to admit he's a liar. And he's a thief who refuses to admit that he's like a thief.
Yeah.
And he clearly doesn't give a fuck about or respect women. So all of these things throughout the movie that he consistently does all just kind of get like flipped Uno reversed on him in a way that's like the woman who stole money from Ted. I feel more so bad for Ted because he got his money stolen. But simultaneously, I don't give a fuck that fucking Fred got cucked. The shot of him like when he sees like
his face this guy with the one little beam of light over his head.
It's fucking great.
And all of these things about our two leads are further amplified by just being surrounded in Spanish actors, like primarily Spanish actors. It's like they all seem normal, like regular human beings, whereas so many characters in Whit Stillman's stuff kind of feel like out of this world a little bit. And it's really good that they were able to do that sort of thing. And it's great that they were able to film in Barcelona, because can we just talk for a second about how fucking beautiful Barcelona is? Yeah. They lucked upon, there's an interview with Bobby Wygant that he did where he talked about like the specific timing that they got. They filmed this in like 1992, just like briefly before and like right after the Olympics were held in Barcelona.
Yeah.
So they had gone through like the city and in the state that it's in. They went through quite a bit of effort to like fix things up, to renovate, to like repair broken facades and stuff. Yeah. So that little time lapse is absolutely it at its most perfect and pristine.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they were able to catch that on camera. It's just that one shot where they're towards the beginning of the movie where they're just kind of like touring the downtown area, that main strip, and like catching everything. It's just like it feels a little out of place timing, and like maybe you could have just cut that out, but
I don't think so, because I think from a character perspective, it's showing that this guy once again has lived here for a while, and he's just trying to be respectful of the whole thing. And with Chris Eichmann's character, it's just showing him being a fucking twat. I think it's an establishing thing, like right up front. Like everything that a character does and says, if you're being efficient with your screenplay, should be about furthering who that character is. And going further back on what you were saying with all these actors, the thing that I like about it, that it sort of juxtaposes with this theme of sort of like Americanism and sort of like Americanism at the time versus like what was happening in Barcelona and what was happening with the Soviet Union by comparison, is the fact that like, okay, the Soviet Union is obviously going to be inherently in a lot of ways more progressive than America, specifically America during the Reagan era. The Reagan era, you know, had brought about this sort of old-fashioned kind of Americanism that was like, as we've talked about several times in the show, it didn't actually exist. It's a big fucking lie that is the American dream. But simultaneously, to these people, it's very real. So they get defensive of all these fucking ideas. They get defensive about sort of like, in the 50s, we fucking, you know, we freed Europe.
Because if they were referring to the political movement Benito Mussolini led, I'd be really offended. Men wearing this uniform died ridding Europe of fascism.
As a result, it's like they're so like entrenched in a meritocracy that like the idea of people having different sexual lifestyles in them is so like uncomfortable. You know, something that then gets brought up in Last Days of Disco, to where you have a bunch of people who are countercultural juxtaposed against these unexperienced people. Well, here you have a bunch of people to where it's kind of generally conceived that, like, monogamy isn't necessarily, like, the necessary norm here. There are some things that are brought up, obviously, a man having sex with a 15, 16-year-old, not cool. And that's kind of addressed as not cool. But then you have, I don't know, just like this entire movie where sort of you have two men sort of confronted on their own sexual inadequacies and sort of their own personal reactions to that. The fact that they don't know how to deal with the fact that none of these women have sort of like hang-ups. You know, you have, I don't remember which scene in particular it is, but just sort of this idea of just like, what you don't need in order to have sexual intercourse, those sort of like emotional attachments.
I have to be attracted to them sexually.
But I always thought that women had to have some kind of profound emotional bond with a man. That a secure romantic relationship before they became interested in a relation of that kind.
Yeah, it's people that are so fucking focused on their own little world and own little fucking purview that they can't see what's like right in front of their face. You know what I mean? Colin, this film, I think, has one of the closest things you'll get in a Whit Stillman flick to action of any sort, in that there are like bombings and that there's like melodrama and like there's the shooting and all that sort of thing. How do you think it was? How do you think he handled it in this one?
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's particularly like You know, it's not bad. It's not particularly effective. You know, I guess comparing it to like Metropolitan, it's like a much better movie. There's clearly like more stuff behind it. I don't know. It's like one of those things where the implementation, a lot of times with how it happens, obviously is stuck in there to sort of be a jolt out of your seat a lot of times, to where it just will happen out of nowhere. But the actual execution of it within the story, I guess the shooting is shot in like a fairly decent way that happens, but nothing in particular, I guess, like stands out to me from a filmmaking perspective.
Yeah, there was a worry like with fans that like even back in the day, that he was going a little too far, that he was going to be a Hollywood sellout by putting action in his films.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
There's not.
And it's one of those things where he worked very diligently to make sure that it didn't like interrupt the flow of the story, and that it wasn't like way too much, that it wasn't like taking up too much space.
Yeah.
You know, at certain points he got some pushback to be like, maybe bring it back a little bit, and he said, all right, maybe I'll bring it back a little bit. So I think he's not like an asshole. He's far from the fucking sellout that anyone would ever be fucking worried about.
That was not even anything that vaguely entered my mind.
Yeah.
So I think that's more of like a personal worry that he was having, and sort of like the general, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff where, like, you know, you'll have like press junkets for like filmmakers at the time where this thing very much in the moment, like, this is what I have to worry about because this is what people are going to remember because that's what they're pushing for right now. And give it like 10, 20 years, no one fucking knows what you're talking about. And that thing that you're worrying yourself about, like, right now does not affect the overall piece of art that you're making.
It's like part of like opening up. There's once again, going back to that interview, he talks about like he wanted to kind of open things up from the claustrophobia of Metropolitan, where everything's kind of shot in a room and things are fairly small and closed off, as you know, purposefully, you know, to kind of like, you know, bring down the scale.
Well, it's limitations on the lack of money the man hooked. So
There's a really fucked up outtake from that, where he talks about basically he was touring, he was in Switzerland, and he was showing this thing at, like, it's not a theater, it's like a big stadium, like a sports stadium, seats like 1,500 people or something like that. Yeah. And he got up on stage. The people there speak German, and they decided to put it up on screen in English, and with French subtitles.
Okay.
And they had some guy who spoke French try to explain it in German or in French or something like that. And he was explaining, like, oh, when I started, I wanted to do something kind of like what is it? Jim Jarmusch and Spike Lee. I wanted to kind of do something on the same smaller scale, but it came out as I am the new Spike Lee. Yeah. I am the new Jim Jarmusch.
Yeah.
Which is an insane fucking thing to say.
Yeah.
And he talks about
just cut to Spike Lee doing the face.
And he's like, it's very important that people see this on like a real theater screen, and that people see movies on the medium that they're intended to, and that like gimmicks and that sort of thing can like wear on people. And you know, it's just like he's like, I'm so terrified that like all these people that left just hated me because first off, they could barely understand what was going on the screen, and they got that, you know, introduction to who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And it's like, nah, you really gotta. He really cares about the experience and cares about making sure people enjoy the movie to the best of their fucking ability. So I don't think he'd ever like sell out.
No, I don't. I think that, I don't know, that is like a silly worry to me, because as much as like you worry about the people's experience, like you can't be over their shoulder.
Yeah.
Like explaining what the movie is, and you can't like make sure every theater is going to present it in the exact way it is. So your art just kind of needs to speak for it fucking self, or speak for its fucking self. So I don't know.
So we talked a little bit about the writing style as far as like characters go, just like character interactions. But as far as you know, as far as his style goes, with your exposure, these three films, like how do you enjoy his writing style overall? Whit Stillman's.
I mean, he doesn't make what I would call hangout movies. They're sort of, I don't know, taking just sort of like a very, at this point, all three of his films are taking sort of like historical points in time that meant something to him, and doing what American Graffiti does for something like cruising for California in the 60s. You know, it was, to George Lucas, it was an idea to preserve this mating ritual that lasted maybe like 5 to 6 years of teenagers doing this kind of stuff. And I feel like he's doing a similar thing. And American Graffiti like falls in a hangout movie, but I'm not sure I'd really put it there. I don't know. I feel like it varies. I feel like movies have like each movie has like its own like pacing issues at like different points in the thing, and I don't know. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I need more time to think on this, but generally speaking, it's kind of hard to judge his writing style over the course of these 3 different things, because while they are similar, they're tackling 3 different topics.
And they're obviously evolving with him as like a filmmaker and that sort of thing.
And you showed them to me out of order. So.
Yeah, that's the order they recommend to watch it in. So
okay, they're still out of order. So.
Nah, I like that. I like that summary. Not quite like Hangout films, but capturing like a small fragment of history through his eyes, basically. The way that he like remembers things, and with maybe little embellishments here and there. You know, catching like little conversations and expanding upon them a little bit.
I don't know if you're comparing it to something like Dazed and Confused or Everybody Wants Some, like the thing about like those movies that kind of embody Hangout movies to me. Are like, these are not characters with like cemented political beliefs a lot of the time. You like, not even saying like any of these characters in this movie have like good solid political beliefs that they full on like express their lives to or anything like that. It's just like they believe they do. A lot of a lot of Richard Linklater characters sort of don't have anything figured out. Even if they may try and put the persona that they do, they're young people just trying to express the emotions they have to like a person one-on-one. They're not trying to express these larger issues, even if thematically they sort of do.
Yeah, it kind of works almost exactly the opposite with Stillman characters. In this film especially, that they come in thinking they know everything, and then it's slowly broken down, and eventually they come out with at least some hope that they're learning at the end. You know, when the boat is sunk, at least they maybe found their way to a dinghy. You know what I mean? I think I'll just jump right on into any standout moments or scenes that like really got you up in arms, aside from fucking Fred getting shot in the face.
Well, I mean, I think resulting that is where the movie actually starts to like come together for me as like a cohesive piece. Everything with him inside of the hospital room, it begins addressing with like a point that Ted makes that I think is really important, which is like sort of all preconceived notions come aside when you sort of realize that it's like family. And you have to go on that. And I don't know, there's just something about that to where there's like this layer of maturity that his disagreements suddenly like kind of dissipate with him. And you sort of start to see him as like an actual human being instead of someone who's like a career man trying to make like what it is. And for a moment, a lot of those like difficulties like disappear, because as he says to this girl,
until Fred comes out of this, I kind of made a resolution not to do or think about anything else.
I don't know, I think that's sort of where the movie kind of like comes together, and it's not really one specific moment, although I don't know, the moment where he's sort of like he prays with this girl that he ends up like being like ends up like being with at the end of the movie, and then he ends up like seeing her like drawing that like illustration of like an angel standing over him. Everything. I think all that stuff specifically works really well. I'm sorry, I have said a lot, but I'm sorry if I don't have like specifics.
Oh no, you're fine. That is a very specific thing. That's a chunk of the fucking movie that I think stands out to you. It's just not quite my favorite parts of the movie are like before that, where they're just building up this idiocracy in Fred as a character. They got like fucking he says like, oh, I'm just borrowing this from the consulate, and then like step it's found out that he just stole the fucking alcohol. There's the ants scene. The ants scene is very it's something that I would show to people to be like, this is Whit Stillman, you know, this is like his shit.
That was really terrible.
You were blowing it way out of proportion. Don't take it so seriously. Those red ants were bad news. They weren't any good for anybody.
Fucking, let's do real quick. Do we want to jump into? Oh, you gotta lift it so far up with your shirt. Oh, don't do that. cut away.
Music, and it's an hour. And you know who it's with? It's Tony, baby.
I just want to give a moment to the composer of this film, Mark Suozzo. He's been the composer on all three of these. He's been like a little overshadowed because I've had other things to talk about.
Yeah.
Metropolitan, I focused more on the other composer, and Todd Judson. Last Days of Disco had a whole fucking history lesson.
Yeah.
What I find really good about his style of composing is that pretty much everything that he does works to service without like standing out. It's you'll move from like soundtrack, right? Like soundtrack song, and then it'll move into fucking composition that feels like very natural and very like whatever, and then it'll move on into the next soundtrack. This one has like tunes, and since they're all like, since many of them at least are in Spanish, I just don't know them. It becomes even more glaringly obvious that he's working to make it hide, not quite hide, but just like sit there and be part of the fucking film.
Yeah.
And without like having these big iconic like melodies, he's not standing out. This isn't like a Star Wars flick. And this is kind of like a different challenge with Last Days of Disco, where he had to kind of make them stand out a little bit.
Yeah.
They needed to be like, oh, this is the real world, and then this is the discotheque. And so they had to like contrast fairly, heavily. So the suspenseful nature of those tunes is it's warranted. So it shows that he's capable of doing it, but he knows when it needs to just fucking be part of the world and to make you feel like included, I guess.
No, I mean, I think it did its job because I didn't really notice the music at all, and I'm not saying that is like a bad thing or anything like that.
It can be taken as a very bad thing sometimes, but I think it's in the positive light here.
No, I don't think any, like, especially with something like this or editing, I don't think you should really be noticing that kind of shit. It's supposed to be almost an invisible art form.
Yeah.
At a certain point, and with this, no, I didn't notice it, and I don't consider that like a bad thing in the slightest, especially because I have to edit this, and I don't have to edit it like the Last Days of Disco one where, fuck you.
Sorry about that. So I obviously have like some closing questions, but do you have any like final thoughts that you want to just bust into?
As far as like, I guess it's less so closing thoughts on this and more so on like Whit Stillman and what you've shown me of him.
Okay.
This is a director who I wasn't really consciously aware of. Like I said, I saw you get this box set, but it wasn't like movies I knew or anything like that. I appreciate you showing me this kind of stuff. I don't know. It's like one of those things with like films, and especially the way we kind of have them displayed on streaming now. I know a lot of these are like available on streaming. But like, it's not something I would have ever really gone out of my way to like seek out, not in like a negative way. It's just obviously these aren't getting like any kind of press, or anything like that, and it's not something unless I would have found in like a video essay that I would have gone and seeked out myself. So I appreciate you showing me these because, as always, I'm more than happy to sort of like educate myself and be educated by another friend in sort of like an area of film that I don't really know about. And to me, film is all about just gaining perspective. Roger Ebert said film is an empathy machine. And if it's an empathy machine, I definitely empathize with these assholes, probably more than I would have otherwise. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that really summarizes how I feel about Whit Stillman as a guy and as a creator, as a fucking creative voice, is that he makes the thing that he views as like, this is what I can contribute, right? Yeah. This is like something that is meaningful to me and something that I really want to fucking put out there into the world. And he knows what steps he kind of has to take to get there. He knows that he needs help along the way from talented people, and he needs to learn as he goes. And he's willing to like make these extra changes to say, oh, I think I could wrap this up as like a trilogy if I make this third movie. And that's kind of what I'm working on. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. He doesn't rush to any of them. They all have like about a 4-year gap between releases. So it's a decent enough time that while he's writing or working on one of them, he's writing and thinking about another. And he made these 3 movies. The third one kind of bombed a little bit, and then he said, I think for now I'm done making movies. And, you know, people did legitimately think he was just, he's gone, it's over, you know, whatever. It's so over for Whit Stillman, he's never coming back because he'd been gone for quite a while. Every now and again he'd spring up as like doing a little interview with someone and saying, I have this idea in the works, it might come to be, it might not, and then it wouldn't. And then the 2010s roll around and he says, I've got a couple ideas for movies, and some of them came out, you know? And now it's on like streaming services. He did one with like Netflix, and then I think he did one with like fucking Hulu. I don't know, I'll put it up here. The only thing left to do, really, is to kind of rate these things against each other, right? As far as like the trilogy, how do you think you'd rank, just right now, how you feel you'd rank each movie? Like, which ones?
I'm gonna be honest, I can't really rank this yet.
Can't really rank it?
Yeah, I can rank the other two. I think Last Days of Disco is above Metropolitan. I don't know entirely how I feel about this yet. So not to be a cop-out, but this is nebulous, floating in the void right now. I'm not entirely sure yet.
That's fine. My answer is also a cop-out. There are things about each one of them that I really, really enjoy. Obviously, Metropolitan is like a success story, which I always love to see. I always love to see people beat the odds and make something, and even if it's not perfect, to see it be even cohesive is like great. Last Days of Disco was very interesting to me. It had subject matters I really fucking liked, especially like this whole fucking the death of disco, like this tiny little piece of history. And Barcelona it's pretty, it's beautiful, it's I think the best written in my opinion. If I were to just fucking go with it, maybe that's to do with there's only 2 main characters instead of like a group of 5 or 6 of them in this one. But no, I think they're all great. I think they're all good at least. And I would say Barcelona is probably a contender for great.
I heard that little great in there. You can think they're all great.
Yeah, no, I gotta think critically about these things too. Obviously, I can't be too nice. Like there's flaws with all of them. They're all like 7 out of 10s and 3 stars out of 5 on like all the review sites, and I think that's that's fair.
But that's an aggregate, though. You have to realize is when you're saying like they're all 7 out of 10s, that is an aggregate and sort of like fucking like it's showing sort of like the average of what people would do. There's a lot of people that probably do 5s or 3s or whatever. I don't know. We've had conversations about this a lot off camera. There are definitely a lot of films that like I love that a lot of people just absolutely hate, and then there's stuff that we've talked about on here that I've really disliked that you love. I think it's always good to be like self-aware of stuff about like movies that you like are wrong, but you can still have a movie that you think has stuff wrong with it and be like, fuck you, it's 5 stars. I don't know. That's me at least. But.
But I do feel that it's fair, the general ranking. I think a good way of summing them up is all of these movies are like pretty good or great. And I know there are people out there that say, this is my fucking favorite, you know? People will say Barcelona's my favorite fucking movie, Metropolitan's my favorite fucking movie, Last Days of Disco is my favorite movie. That's kind of like the way that I think about them, is like you'd show them to people and they're either gonna say, you know, it's not for me, or they're gonna be like, yo, this fucking thing I would have never seen, I think is really, really, truly exceptional. Truly exceptional. And that's just great, you know? It's not with many creators, with many directors, with anybody, that there's like a small selection of their work that you can say, all right, this represents fucking them. And we can just sit down and marathon these movies and then see like how we feel about the guy, how we feel about his writing, how we feel about this, that, and the other thing. And so I'm really glad that on a whim, I picked this up at the store and tried it out and got to show it to you and to everybody out there. I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for fucking being here. YouTuber, end of video spiel, the things that make the buttons light up, all that sort of thing.
Get ready next episode, because we are going to watch some hooky, wacky, and crazy, and maybe a little bit fucking depressing. See you guys next time.